All right, let's talk about recording out our cinematics from Unreal Engine and using cameras. So I'm in the starter map here, super basic stuff. And there's a couple ways that you can create cameras. You can go up to the button up top here to add any sort of actor in Unreal Engine, or you can create it directly from a level sequence. I'll show you both. So we click here, go down to cinematic, and then cinema camera actor. So as soon as I do that, I get a little pop-up here that's showing me the live camera view. And if I go and navigate to it, my little camera is right over here. So if I move the camera, this little window changes because that's what the camera is seeing. So move this back a little bit, do a little animation. There's another way that you can move cameras around. So right now I'm just dragging the actor around in the level. This is like you would maneuver any sort of actor. You can also pilot the actor. If you click on perspective up here, it doesn't always say perspective, but right now it does. Go to Cin Camera Actor. I'm now looking through this camera. So you can see right here, it says pilot actor, Cin Camera Actor. You can actually do this to any sort of actor, but now I am the camera. So if I, go over here and look at the ground, and then I hit this ejection button right there, now I'm back in my editor camera. There's my camera that I pointed at the ground. You can also right click on them and go to Pilot Cinema Camera Actor. A lot of different ways to do the same thing. Here, let's pilot that again. Zoom up, sure. Right there. Eject. And, you can always change the details for this stuff. I just piloted it, so it's not very precise. But if I wanted to zero out the rotation, I could just put zeros in there. Pretty simple. Maybe move it down a little bit. Maybe we'll just have it fly into this doorway. Incredibly simple stuff. Some other things that I could play around with, or actually before we get to that. So if I click off this camera, see that little viewport disappears. If I click on it, I see what I'm looking through in the camera. There's a little pin button down here, a little thumbtack button. If you click that, no matter what you click on in the world, see I'm clicked on this little ball over here now, I still get to see the camera view. So that could be useful for you, or not. Some other things that we can play around with the camera while clicked on it. We can change the focal length. We can change where the focus is. So down here, focus settings, manual focus distance, and draw debug focus plane. Draw debug focus plane, I'll click that on. And you might not see it right away, but if I start playing around with the manual focus distance, here in the world, see this purple plane? That is where the focus is at currently. So if I focus on, put that right in the middle of that ball, now everything behind that ball is out of focus. Which can be hard to tell with the purple on. I'll turn that off. Yeah, everything's slightly out of focus in the background. Whereas, if I change the focus out to, out in the distance, now the ball is slightly out of focus. You can also use a little eyedropper tool here to take that and directly put it on actors, and that will give you the exact value, the distance away from the camera. Can be useful. So we can keyframe all of those things. We can also keyframe the current focal length, the aperture. If you know anything about photography, the aperture controls your depth of field. You can get all of those things. But let's start animating this. So next up, I'm going to get a new level sequence. So level sequences are up here in the little slate icon, add level sequence. Add that there, choose where you want to save it. I'll just keep that as is. And then you get a little window down here that is your level sequence. Now, since I added a camera not from Sequencer, I have nothing down in here right now, right? You can also add cameras directly from Sequencer with a little camera icon. So I need to drag this camera into Sequencer. So that's all right, I can do that easily. What I have to do is just find it in my outliner and drag it in. And there it is. And typically what happens when you drag camera in is you'll get the actor itself and then this camera cuts track. Try and make some room here. A little tight squeeze. All right, so pay attention that you can click on these little camera icons right here. This is useful if you have multiple cameras, because the camera that is blue and clicked on is the camera that is currently active and you are looking through. So notice when I turn both of these off, now I'm back in my editor camera. But if I were to click on a sync camera actor down here, it jumps right to that camera and I get to see that animation. So I'm going to go in and add just a little bit of animation here. I'll eject from that and pull back. So I'm going to add a keyframe here at frame 0. And then, I don't know, keyframe at frame 150. Take this forward into the room. Add another keyframe there. And then when I scrub this back and forth, I can see the animation happening, but I can't see what it looks like. I'm not looking through the camera. So I need to click on the little camera icon. Now I'm looking through the camera. And that's what it looks like. Incredibly basic, incredibly simple. You can also keyframe things like aperture too, or focus. Any of these settings in the details panel that have the little diamond keyframe icon, you can keyframe for whatever your artistic desires are. So now that I have that, I have an animation. So your camera cuts track is incredibly important. Looking through that camera will actually show you what's supposed to be rendering. If you ever run into the problem where you are trying to render out and you get this view where it's just like, I don't know, looking at some weird part of your level like this, and you're wondering what the heck's going on with my render, it's probably because you don't have a camera cuts track. Remember, the camera cuts track is sort of like a director track. Actually, it is a director track. The director is the track that tells which cameras to be visible when. So if I had multiple cameras here, I could lower this down and say that camera 1 is visible from frame 0 to 70-ish. And then if I had another camera over here, it would cut to that camera as soon as the timeline got over that far. So right now I only have one camera, but if you ever have rendering problems, that's probably what the issue is. So we can click on the camera cuts camera to see what our animation is. Okay, this is a very amazing video here that we're making. Next thing, let's render. So clicking on the little slate icon here will bring up the rendering options. So if I click the dots next to it, I'll get movie render queue and then movie scene capture. Movie scene capture hasn't been used in like 3 or 4 years. It's pretty antiquated and old. We want movie render queue. If for whatever reason you don't have that, it's because you maybe picked a template that didn't have it turned on. It's not that big of a deal. We can turn it on manually. We just have to go up here into settings and go to plugins and then turn it on. Those templates that you choose in the beginning are just filled with presets. They're not, you can make them all the same if you turn the presets back on. But we're looking for movie render queue. This is already going to be turned on for me. Movie render queue. And also, I like to turn on the ProRes. I find it easier rather than having you reassemble image sequences right now. Image sequences are great. They are the way that professional VFX artists do render things out, but ProRes is fine for us as well. So turn that on. Word of warning, if you're working on a Mac with Unreal running Mac version, it will not work for some reason, even though Apple makes ProRes. It's just Unreal ProRes Media does not work on Macintoshes. Very strange. All right, so I have both those on. Let's click the slate, and you will see this window here. And in here, we can choose where we want things to save. We click on these settings right here. It currently says unsave config. If I go ahead and click that, it's going to give me a lot of options. If I click on settings in the top, I'm going to choose ProRes. You'll also have it render out a JPEG sequence. Why not? And click on ProRes. Apple ProRes 444 is very obnoxious for what we're trying to do right now. I'll go down to proxy. Worse quality, smaller file size, but that's fine for us right now. Deferred rendering, we don't really need to do anything in there right now. Output is where we are saving things to. So this is saving to the project folder in a saved folder in movie render. That's fine. We can also change our resolution and some other things in there, but we're good for right now with all that. What else is in here? Settings. I know I mentioned this before, settings, anti-aliasing. This is where you can increase the quality of your render with the anti-aliasing settings. Things that this will help with is motion blur and jaggy edges on polygons, that sort of thing. We're going to leave those at just the defaults for right now. So we're just doing a quick render. So I'll click accept, and then I'll click render down bottom here. And fortunately, it's on another screen right now. After it compiles shaders, see if I can drag it over. All right, switch to the other screen. Not sure how this is going to look in the render or in the movie recording, but you see it's processing, has to compile some shaders right now. And just be patient. If you add a bunch of new stuff to the level, this tends to have to happen before each render. I'll pause and wait for this to process. All right, as soon as those shaders are finished compiling, it's going to start rendering. I'll actually drag the window back to the other monitor real quick. There we go. Rendering. Now, this is going to be incredibly quick because my anti-aliasing settings are just at 1. This could take a very long time if we had those settings rendered way up high. So let's go and find this video. So again, this is in your project folder, wherever you saved your project folder, in saved and in movie renders. In the settings, the render settings that I showed you, you can change where this is. But I just located it here. All right, so if I go to, let's scroll down here. Here we have level sequence movie, open this up. There it is, look at that, beautiful. Another way that you can render things is with image sequences. Here I just have a sequence of JPEGs. JPEGs are not great to render as, except for maybe a test. Typically we want to use a better file format. PNG, also not great, but better than JPEG. You could render as PNGs in Unreal. The best format to render is EXR files, but that's a little bit over your head at this point. But that's typically what's used in the VFX industry. EXR files are very great files for compositing and VFX sort of work. So if I had an image sequence, if you didn't want to render the ProRes way, you could reassemble an image sequence, which is very easy to do. Here I just have the image sequence, which is 1 JPEG in this case for each frame, 150 frames. And you can use Premiere to do this. You can use After Effects to do this. You can use DaVinci Resolve to do this. Whatever your video editing software of choice is, you can use. So in Premiere here, actually myself, I use DaVinci Resolve, but I'll use Premiere since I think more people know it. If I right-click on project, just like I'm importing any media, and I browse to, where the heck is this even located? I think my T drive. I'm using an old project, so some other stuff here. Oops, movie renders. All right, here's all my image sequences. So I only need to pick the first one, and don't double click it because you don't want to import this just as a still picture. The trick is you need to toggle this little box down here called image sequence. So this will take any files that are named sequentially, like new level sequence 1.0000 and then 0001, 0002. You click open now, and this will import as a sequence of files rather than as one individual JPEG. So I'll drag that over into Premiere. And then here it is as a 5-second video. That's it. Then you can render it out from here. You can make your edits. You can do whatever sort of effects that you want to do. And again, you can bring this into any sort of video editing program. That's up to you. But that is a very quick walkthrough of how to render videos in Unreal. There are more advanced settings like rendering to EXR files and increasing anti-aliasing settings that are outside the scope of this, but definitely things that you can do.